Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I am having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
Some cases fade with time. This one does not. 7 years after the Watts family was destroyed, the echoes remain. In prison, Chris Watts lives behind concrete walls. In North Carolina, Shanann's parents carry an emptiness that no justice could ever fill. In the digital world, Shanann and her children live on. Their smiles, their laughter, their hope preserved forever on screens that glow long into the night. And yet, even with every court document signed, every confession recorded, this case refuses to rest. It refuses because the facts alone cannot satisfy the human need for answers. How could an ordinary father destroy everything he built? How could a man who kissed his daughters goodnight become their executioner? The silence left behind gave birth to whispers, and the whispers became theories. Some searched for hidden accomplices, others for psychological explanations, and some reached further into the shadows, claiming that what unfolded in Frederick, Colorado, was not only betrayal, but manipulation. That Chris had been caught in something darker: control, obsession, even black magic. This film is not here to tell you those theories are true. It is here to ask why they exist. Why, when confronted with unimaginable evil, we sometimes reach for the supernatural. And in that reaching, what do we reveal about ourselves, our fears, and the fragile trust we place in family? The Watts case still haunts because it is not only a story of murder. It is a story of betrayal, silence, obsession, and the terrifying truth that sometimes the people we trust most are strangers in disguise. Before the silence, there was noise, laughter, children running across the living room, a young mother, camera in hand, sharing her joy with the world. Shanann Watts believed in showing life online. On Facebook, she chronicled birthdays, dinners, new homes, new hopes. She posted videos where her daughters danced, where Chris appeared in the background, shy and reserved. She wanted the world to see resilience, a woman fighting lupus, building a business, raising a family with love. To outsiders, it looked perfect. The Watts family became a digital storybook. A hardworking mother, a quiet father, two radiant little girls, and a baby on the way. Friends and strangers scrolled through Shanann's life and saw something to admire, something to envy, something they believed was safe. But digital perfection is a mask. Behind the brightness of Facebook lived shadows no camera could capture. Financial strain mounting month by month. Family conflicts simmering into resentment. A husband whose silence, once seen as steadiness, was beginning to feel like absence. Shanann's social media became both her strength and her shield. She presented the life she wanted to believe in, the life she hoped would survive. But in the quiet after the posts, she knew something was shifting. Chris was growing distant. His eyes wandered elsewhere. And while she smiled for the camera, she worried in silence. This paradox, the life on display versus the life in private, became fuel for endless speculation after tragedy struck. Viewers rewatched her videos not only for comfort, but for clues. They dissected her words, her expressions, even the silence in Chris's body language. Some saw a family cracking under ordinary pressures. Others saw manipulation. Still others, desperate to explain the unexplainable, whispered about forces darker than human weakness. What the world missed while scrolling was the most heartbreaking truth. Shanann was fighting for her family in real time, even as her husband was building a secret life in the shadows. And soon, those shadows would consume everything. Every smile Shanann shared with the world carried a shadow. She was a woman fighting battles invisible to the camera. battles that became heavier each passing year. Money was the first weight. The Watts family home, gleaming in suburban Colorado, came at a cost too steep for their reality. Credit cards filled with debt, notices piled on the kitchen counter. Each month was a new struggle to keep the image of stability alive. For Shanann, those financial cracks were more than numbers. They were threats to the life she had promised her children. Her health was another constant burden. Living with lupus meant waking each morning already drained, her body a battlefield of fatigue and pain. Yet she kept moving, raising two small daughters, working, traveling, smiling for Facebook videos, pushing herself harder than most could imagine. Pregnant again, she carried not only a new child but the weight of exhaustion she could not admit. And then came the wounds no medicine could heal. Family tensions carved scars that never faded. Shanann and Chris's mother, Cindy, clashed bitterly. A birthday party spiraled into a Cold War, dividing loyalties and deepening Shanann's sense of isolation. She confided in friends that she often felt alone, unsupported, unfairly judged by the very people who should have been her allies. But the deepest wound came from Chris himself. Once her steady anchor, he had grown distant. His silences were colder. His eyes seemed elsewhere. He touched her less, spoke to her less, loved her less. Shanann begged for answers in texts, in letters, in late-night conversations that ended in more silence. "I don't know who you are anymore," she wrote. These cracks were invisible to the world scrolling past Shanann's smiling videos. But to her, they were earthquakes. She was a woman carrying illness, debt, conflict, and abandonment, all while forcing herself to smile, to inspire, to hold a collapsing family together. And as Shanann fought her unspoken battles, Chris was fighting none of his. He was building something else. A double life, hidden in shadows. Betrayal rarely arrives as a storm. It begins as a whisper. Chris Watts began to change. He lost weight, built muscle, updated his wardrobe. Friends thought he was getting healthy. Shanann thought he was preparing for the stress of fatherhood again. But the transformation was not for his family. It was for someone else. Late-night calls, secret apps, long hours at work that were spent elsewhere. The quiet, predictable man who once seemed invisible in Shanann's videos was reinventing himself. And in that reinvention came Nichol Kessinger. Nichol was intelligent, independent, and unaware of the storm she was walking into. Chris told her his marriage was ending, that he was trapped in unhappiness, that he wanted a future with her. She believed him. She allowed herself to fall into the story he spun. To Chris, Nichol was more than a lover. She was escape. She represented freedom from debt, from responsibility, from fatherhood, from the burdens of a life he no longer wanted. The heartbreak is not only in the affair itself, but in what it revealed. Chris was no longer the man Shanann thought she married. He had become a stranger living two lives. One life of husband and father, another life of secret romance and reckless fantasy. And when tragedy struck, Nichol's name became inescapable. She had no part in the crime itself, but her presence ignited something powerful in the public imagination. How could an ordinary man destroy everything for an affair that had barely begun? For some, the explanation lay in psychology, the desperate desire for reinvention. For others, that answer was not enough. In the endless churn of conspiracy forums, whispers began that Chris had been manipulated, that he was under a spell, that black magic had been used to bend his will. It was not evidence that gave birth to these theories. It was pain. Because sometimes the truth, that a man simply chose betrayal, feels too unbearable. Nichol Kessinger, willingly or not, became the center of that storm. Not because she cast spells, but because the world could not accept that love alone could be betrayed so completely. And in the shadows of that double life, Shanann's worst fears were confirmed. The husband she loved was already gone. What remained was a stranger living two lives, until one life destroyed the other. Shanann Watts fought the latter. Her body betrayed her every day. Lupus left her drained, aching, fighting for energy she did not have. Yet she carried herself with a smile. She boarded flights for work, filmed cheerful videos, chased her children across living room floors. She hid the pain because her children deserved joy, not fatigue. Pregnancy added weight to her body and to her spirit. Every new life was a blessing, but also a risk. She worried about her health, about their finances, about whether Chris would still be by her side. She carried baby Nico beneath her heart while wondering if her husband's heart still belonged to her. And then there were the battles that cannot be diagnosed in hospitals. The coldness in Chris's eyes when she reached for him. The rejection in his silence when she needed reassurance. The gnawing suspicion that the man who had once been her safe place had already left her emotionally. Her friends saw glimpses of the truth. Texts filled with fear. "I feel like he doesn't want this baby. He doesn't touch me anymore." Shanann's strength was legendary, but even strength fractures when love turns into indifference. She fought to hold her family together, even as she sensed it breaking. She defended her daughters fiercely in family conflicts. She worked tirelessly to create stability in unstable finances. She sacrificed her body, her rest, her pride, believing that love was worth fighting for. The heartbreak of Shanann's story is not only how it ended. It is that she was already breaking long before the final betrayal. And though she never knew it, her battles were not only against illness, isolation, and financial strain. They were against time itself, running out as Chris's double life grew stronger, hungrier, darker. By the time police entered the Watts home with body cameras strapped to their chests, the tragedy had already unfolded. Yet what they recorded still chills the world. A house full of toys, but empty of children. A kitchen that smelled of breakfast, but echoed with silence. Beds unmade. Family photos smiling from the walls like ghosts frozen in time. Viewers later described it as a home that felt hollow, as though the life had been drained from its walls. And then came the interrogation room. A sterile space with white walls and fluorescent light. Chris sat across from investigators, his arms folded, his voice flat. He denied, deflected, avoided. The mask of the quiet, dependable husband cracked in small, telling ways. The silence of the investigators grew heavier, pressing against him like a weight. They let the lies tangle. They let the room close in. It was not only evidence breaking him, it was his own emptiness. And then his father was brought in. Ronnie Watts, who had once taught his son to walk, to ride a bike, to face the world. A father who never imagined he would sit across from his child in this place. His face carried disbelief, his hands trembled, his voice quivered with questions no father should ever ask. Chris leaned forward, whispering fragments of confession. Not full truth. Never full truth. Enough to shatter his father's heart, but not enough to show real remorse. He shifted blame, shaped words to soften horror, calculated even in exposure. For those watching, the most devastating part was not what Chris said. It was what he refused to say. The omissions, the manipulations, the chilling calmness in describing the unimaginable. A father left broken. Investigators left hollow. The world left staring at a man whose eyes showed no reflection of the lives he had destroyed. The collapse of trust between father and son. The silence of children never coming home. The eternal grief of parents who raised a daughter only to bury her because love turned into betrayal. This was not simply the moment a man confessed. It was the moment a family disintegrated in real time. Courtrooms are meant to deliver justice. But in the Watts case, The courtroom became something darker, a theater of grief, a battlefield of broken families, a place where no one left whole. On one side sat Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandy Razusek. They had already lived through the unbearable, burying their daughter, their granddaughters, and the unborn grandson who never drew breath. Their faces in court carried a pain that defied language. Frank's voice cracked as he tried to speak for his daughter, for Bella, for Celeste, for Nico. Sandy clutched tissues in trembling hands, staring at the man who had once promised to love and protect her child. On the other side sat Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts. Their grief was different, but no less suffocating. They, too, had lost everything, not to death, but to betrayal. The boy they raised, the son they thought they knew, was now shackled in a jumpsuit, confessing to unthinkable crimes. How do you love a son who has destroyed another family? How do you grieve for your grandchildren while defending the child who killed them? Every glance across that courtroom was sharp with unspoken words. The Razuseks demanded justice, desperate to defend Shanann's memory against any shadow of blame. The Wattses searched for explanations, clinging to fragments of denial, struggling to believe the boy they raised was capable of this. Letters went unsent. Words of apology were drafted but never spoken. The courtroom could not hold the weight of the silence between two families forever fractured. There would be no reconciliation. There could be no forgiveness. And so, the trial ended, but the wound did not. Shanann's family returned home with gravestones to visit. Chris's family returned home with shame and silence. Both families carried a grief that time will not heal. From the moment Shanann's videos resurfaced online, her cheerful voice, her children's giggles, the family moments she so eagerly shared. But grief in the digital age is never simple. The Watts case was consumed not only as heartbreak, but as content. True crime channels dissected every frame of police bodycam footage. Comment sections filled with judgment, speculation, and rage. Some mourned Shanann. Others accused her. Some tried to humanize Chris. Others demonized him beyond recognition. The idea that a father simply chose to destroy his family felt too unbearable. And so, some reached for the supernatural, for forces darker than psychology or betrayal. These theories say more about us than about the case itself. When faced with evil, we sometimes invent demons rather than accept the fragility of human love. Meanwhile, Shanann's videos, meant to inspire, became battlegrounds. People debated her smile, her tone, her words, as though the truth of her death could be decoded in her Facebook posts. Her digital presence, once her source of strength, became her haunting legacy. The world did not just watch the Watts case. It absorbed it. It picked it apart, claimed pieces of it, turned grief into speculation and sorrow into endless content. And that is why the case still lives, years later. Because it is no longer only about one family in Colorado. It has become a mirror of us all. Shanann Watts never disappeared. She is still here. Her voice plays in countless videos, gentle, proud, hopeful. Her daughter's laughter rings through smartphones, through YouTube channels, through millions of strangers' homes. Bella's quiet songs, Cece's giggles, Shanann's radiant smile as she rests a hand on her pregnant belly, speaking of baby Nico's future. These recordings were once acts of love. Now they are echoes, living ghosts, preserved forever in pixels. For her parents, they are a double-edged sword. Comfort, because they can still see their daughter's face and hear their grandchildren's voices. Torture, because those voices will never echo in their arms again. Every replay is a wound reopened. Every smile a reminder of what was stolen. For strangers, the effect is different, but no less haunting. Millions who never met Shanann feel like they know her. They grieve her as though she were family. They watch her videos late at night, whispering apologies to a woman they never met, crying for children who never grew up. But in this endless replay, something darker happens too. Her legacy becomes distorted. Clips pulled apart, slowed down, dissected, judged. Every glance, every word turned into evidence for theories, including whispers of manipulation, witchcraft, and black magic. While Shanann and her children live on in memory, Chris what lives on in something else, confinement. His days are gray. The clang of metal doors, the shuffle of inmates, the stale air of a cell. Meals served on trays. Lights on, lights off. Time measured not in seasons or milestones, but in sameness. He writes letters, sometimes to strangers, sometimes to those curious enough to reach out. In them, his story changes. New details appear, then vanish. He speaks of God, of forgiveness, of religion. Some say he has found faith. Others believe it is just another mask, another reinvention. But religion cannot erase memory. Confession cannot erase betrayal. Forgiveness cannot resurrect children. And when the lights go out in his cell, when silence falls, Chris is left with the one truth he cannot escape. He is alone with the ghosts of those he destroyed. For the world, the fact that he still breathes is unbearable. Shanann is gone. Bella and Cece are gone. Baby Nico never lived. And yet Chris still wakes up, still eats, still breathes. Life continues for him. But what kind of life is it? He is no longer husband, no longer father, no longer son in the way he once was. He is a hollow figure defined not by who he is, but by what he did. His prison is not only made of concrete and steel. His prison is memory. Every night, the laughter of his daughters. Every morning, the silence of the wife he silenced. Every day, the world outside remembering them while remembering him only as their killer. This is his true sentence. Not years, not bars, but the weight of ghosts that will never leave him. The Watts case has been picked apart for years. Every interview replayed. Every police body cam frame slowed down. Every letter from prison dissected. And yet, for all that analysis, shadows remain. Chris has confessed, but his confessions are never the same. At first, he denied everything. Then he shifted blame. Then he admitted more. Even now, in prison letters and late-night conversations, his story bends and twists. What is truth? What is manipulation? What is performance? We still don't know if this crime was carefully planned or born of a single, catastrophic moment. Was it months of resentment, building until the night he broke? Or was it a sudden collapse, the decision of a man who no longer wanted to carry the weight of the life he had chosen? And what of Shanann's final moments? Did she realize the betrayal in his eyes before the end? Did Bella and Celeste sense danger when their father held them? Or did they still believe they were safe in his arms? These questions pierce deepest, because no courtroom or transcript can ever answer them. And then there are the theories. Nichol Kessinger's name became a storm. To some, she was a woman deceived, lied to, caught in Chris's collapse. To others, she became a symbol of temptation, of manipulation, of dark influence. And maybe that is what keeps the wound open. The unbearable knowledge that some answers died with Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. When the cameras shut off, when the headlines fade, when documentaries end, what remains is the silence that forces us to look inward. The Watts family looked ordinary. Their home looked like ours. Their photos looked like ours. Their smiles looked like ours. That is what makes this story unbearable. It could have been anyone. A house like ours. A family like ours. A betrayal that came not from strangers, but from within. Shanann lived her life with hope, with determination, with love. She fought illness, conflict, and indifference, never giving up on the family she believed in. Bella and Celeste lived only in innocence, their laughter still echoing online, their childhoods frozen forever. Nico never even had the chance. Chris, the man meant to protect them, became the storm that destroyed them. His name will forever be spoken not as father or husband, but as betrayer. But this case is not only about them. It is about us, about the masks we wear, about the lies families carry in silence, about the dangers of indifference, the cost of hidden lives, and the fragility of trust. It is about how we, as a society, consume tragedy, scrolling through videos, spinning theories, even reaching for the supernatural to explain what feels too dark to face. It is about how evil forces us to confront not demons, but ourselves. 7 years later, the Watts case still cuts because it is not just their story. It is ours. A mirror held to every family, every marriage, every fragile bond of love. A reminder that appearances can hide cracks, that silence can be deadly, that betrayal can grow where we least expect it. This case refuses to die because it tells a truth no one wants to hear. That sometimes the greatest danger is not outside our walls, it is inside them.